Our reading today comes to us from the letter to the Philippians, chapter 3, and reading verses 4 to 14. And here is the reading. If someone else thinks they have reasons to put confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day, of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of the Hebrews. In regard to the law, a Pharisee. As for zeal, persecuting the church. As for righteousness based on the law, faultless. But whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. What is more, I consider everything a loss, because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ, Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them garbage, that I may gain Christ, and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but that which is through faith in Christ, a righteousness that comes from God on the basis of faith. I want to know Christ. Yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participation in his suffering, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow attaining to the resurrection from the dead. Not that I have already obtained all this, or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, I press on towards the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenwards in Christ Jesus. Thanks be to God for his holy word. Amen. I thought today I'd start by letting you in on a few of the secrets of my early morning routines. Some of the routines, other than just simply pressing the snooze button. Part of my morning routines consist of going through various apps on my phone, and they're all mostly to do with health and fitness. So, for example, I go to the MyFitnessPal app and I record my weight just to check to see whether I've made any progress since yesterday, since last week, since a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. Am I heading in the right direction with my weight? Then I go on to my NHS BMI tracker, and then I record my weight, tells me my BMI. That tells me, am I heading towards a healthy weight or back towards obesity? To be fair, the last time my BMI was in the healthy zone, people kept asking me what was wrong with me because I looked so ill. Nevertheless, I check the BMI tracker every day. And then I go onto my exercise app and check all my trends. Are they all pointing upwards, or have some of them started to point downwards? If so, I need to do something about that. So I'm heading towards my goals with exercise. And then I go onto my COVID-19 app and report mostly two things every day. First of all, I report that I have never had a coronavirus test. And the second button it asks me to press is the one that says, I feel perfectly normal. Well, I press that button, but I know some of you will have different views on normality as it relates to me. Nevertheless, I press the button. So all these apps, part of my morning routine, and they're all there to check that I'm still straining towards, pressing on with the goals that I've set myself, at least when it comes to health and fitness. The Apostle Paul perhaps would have appreciated an app to see how well he was doing compared to yesterday, compared to a month ago, compared to 6 months ago, compared to last year, with his goal of wanting to know Christ. I'm sure he would have loved an app for that. The thing is, in AD 60 in Philippi, no such app existed, and neither does it exist today. Talking about the COVID-19 app, though, reminds me that in AD 60 in Philippi, the place to which Paul was writing in our reading today, they didn't have coronavirus, of course, but they did have other things, amazing health issues that were as widespread for them in their city as coronavirus is in our world today. And when I was doing some of the background reading for today, I looked up some of these things that were so widespread in Philippi in AD 60, at about the time when Paul was writing. And I thought I'd share some of these things with you today. We've got so used, haven't we, since the pandemic started, in dealing with statistics and percentages. Well, here are some of the things, the percentages and statistics that the people of Philippi were coping with in their day. So here's a few of them. For example, there was a high rate of infant and child mortality. As much as 50% of people would die before they had reached the age of 10. Nearly half of the people would be dead before they'd reached double figures in their age. For those who did survive the milestone of reaching 10 years old, they still had a low life expectancy. Not many of them expected to live to be older than 25 to 30 years old. That in turn meant that there was a high proportion of widows and orphans. At least 50%, and at times as much as 40% of the population were slaves. A higher than normal for the time rate of deformities and disabilities were in the population too, both congenital and acquired. When Paul wrote a letter, normally it had to be read to the community due to widespread illiteracy of epidemic proportions. As we think about building a better world, if there were an app to measure the impact of knowing Jesus on so many of these social issues in Philippi, I wonder if it would be an app that recorded trends that were going upwards, a straight line to say things had plateaued, or a downward arrow to note that actually we're slipping backwards. Well, let's just go through those statistics again and just see what an impact Christianity has had, for better or for worse, on some of those things since AD 60. Just share a few of them with you again. So there was a high rate of infant and child mortality. Well, it has to be said that knowing Christ and Christianity has had a great impact on reducing infant and child mortality through organisations such as Christian Aid and our own Methodist relief organisation called All We Can. Have done so much work on reducing infant and child mortality. That's not to say, of course, that it's still not a major issue in the world today. So much more still needs to be done. And we know, don't we, that by the time I've even finished this sentence, more children will have died in the world, even by the end of this sentence, from entirely preventable diseases. But Christians have played their part in making a better world and reducing that rate. The same is true when it comes to low life expectancy and with work with widows and orphans. Christians play a major role across the world in mission to these people in great need. Then there's that alarming statistic, isn't there, that in Philippi in AD 60, somewhere between 15% to 40% of the population were slaves. Now, it has to be said that Christians, particularly in the 19th century, worked so hard to combat the use of slavery into society. Although we have to hold our hands up here, don't we, and say that on the other hand, so many Christians use the scriptures to justify slavery in the first place. But nevertheless, famously, people such as Wilberforce were working hard for the abolition of slavery. But in the 21st century today, slavery still exists. We know that because of human trafficking, so many people find themselves as modern slaves, unbelievably so, in the 21st century. And there's so much work to do for Christians to be involved in making this a better world today. The letters that had to be read to the community because of widespread illiteracy. Again, Christians have played such a major part, haven't they, through education in relieving illiteracy, because we know that if we learn to read, then we can read to learn. And there's hardly anything that's a greater tool in lifting people out of poverty than overcoming illiteracy in the world today. So many Christians are involved in education. They have been over the centuries, they are today, and we pray for them, especially in these pandemic times where working in education is fraught with so many difficulties. So there isn't an app for Paul to use to help him to know whether he's making progress in his goal to know Christ better. But if we think that knowing Christ is going to have an impact on making a better world, even in the absence of an app on our phones to help us know how we're doing, how can we measure that knowing Jesus is actually making a difference to the world in which we live in the 21st century? Where do we even start? Well, perhaps we could start with some of the issues that are very live for us this week. There's a few I could mention straight away. The first one is that Thursday just gone, October the 1st, was the first day of Black History Month. Now, it has to be said that without the Black Lives Matter campaign, this month, to my shame, would have passed me by, just as it has done every other year. I probably wouldn't even have noticed that it's Black History Month. Nevertheless, I have noticed this year. I've been on the website and I can see what their strapline is. The strapline says, "Dig deeper, look closer, think bigger." So if I want my knowing Christ to make a difference in making a better world, I could do worse than take my cue from the strapline for Black History Month. So when it comes to knowing Jesus, I could say, Lord, if it's true that the greatest thing in my life is knowing you, and if it's true that I was singing the lines of that worship song, that I want to know you more, then in this moment, I want to commit myself, when it comes to knowing you, Jesus, to digging deeper, looking closer, thinking bigger. But then Jesus, if I want my knowing you to have an impact in making the world a better place, perhaps the place to start would be with Black History Month. Not letting it pass me by this year, but actually to engage with it. And heaven knows, with technology, I've never had more resources at my fingertips, websites and apps, to help me to engage with Black History Month. So that when it comes to considering the Black lives that matter, I might actually put something into practice when it comes to digging deeper, looking closer, thinking bigger. So that's one thing you could do, I could do. If we want our knowing Christ to make an impact, let's engage with Black History Month in October 2020. The second place we might start, to get us a live issue, is that just to realise that before we meet again, next Saturday actually, we will have observed World Mental Health Awareness Day, or week. It's next Saturday. Heaven knows, we realise very acutely, don't we, during this pandemic, how it's having an effect on people's mental health. It may have had an effect on yours. It may be affecting mine more than I realise. But one of the things that the website says, again, if you want to look on the website for Mental Health Awareness Week, what their strapline is this: that kindness matters most. One of the things that they say on the website is that when we show an act of kindness to another person, it not only affects their mental health for the good, it affects our own mental health for the good too. I'm sure you've experienced that for yourself. You know what I mean. That kindness matters most. One of the things I've always loved about the wordplay in New Testament Greek is the wordplay between the word for Christ, Christos, and the word for kindness, which is Krestitos. So, in a way, if you want to know Christos, then get to know Christos by showing Krestitos, kindness. And by the way, if you look in the dictionary of New Testament Greek for the Greek word for kindness, it tells you that it happens when you are meeting real need. I don't think any of us are devoid of opportunities, are they, today, of meeting real need during this pandemic. And we celebrate all the ways that you have been meeting real needs since all of this began. Because knowing Christos is also about showing Krestitos. We show that we know him by the kindness that we do. So today, this week, always really, if I want to know Christ more, the impact that that will have on making a better world is that I will show more kindness. So, the Apostle Paul, he wants to know Christ more as he writes to the people of Philippi with all of their social needs that we talked about as we began today. So many real needs that need to be met. And when he talks about knowing Christ, and the fact also that he also says in this passage that he wants to have a relationship with him that's based on righteousness, not righteousness based on the law, but righteousness that's based on his faith in Christ. And when he says that, he's basically saying two fundamentals of our faith. One is that we believe, don't we, that we're not saved by works, but we are saved by our faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and what he's done for us on the cross. And when he's talking about knowing Christ, he's talking about having a personal relationship with a living Saviour. These things are so important to us. They're part of our evangelical heritage, aren't they? We value them, we treasure them, we cherish them. And yet it has to be said, doesn't it, that when you think about knowing Christ, it's impossible to think about knowing him without also thinking about the sheep and the goats in Matthew 25, as they relate to these social issues in the Philippi of AD 60 and in the world of the 21st century. For the goats didn't realise that they had known Jesus. They'd passed him, they'd seen him in their lives, they just didn't recognise him. They didn't recognise him in the lives of the poor. They didn't recognise him in the lives of the naked. They didn't recognise him in the lives of the hungry. They didn't recognise him in the lives of the prisoner. And by the way, while we're talking about Black History Month and Mental Awareness Week, Health Awareness Week, it might be worth remembering that next Sunday when we meet starts Prisoners Week. Then we'll be thinking about Matthew 25, I'm sure. But all these people in Matthew 25, the hungry, the naked, the sick, the prisoner, the lonely, they'd have heard Paul talking about wanting to know Christ. And they might have said, we don't care what you know or who you know. We just need to know that you care. Do people need to know that I know Christ? If they do, then they need to know that I care.